So, hi everyone. Shall I start sharing my screen or?
I'll introduce you first.
Okay, thank
Hi.
you.
Welcome everyone to the Paideia Institute online lecture series. I'm very happy to introduce Maria Gerolemou. Thank you for joining us today. Maria Gerolemou is currently a visiting assistant professor in the classics department at Johns Hopkins University. She holds a degree in classics from Athens and Munich and specializes in ancient Greek drama, Wunderkultur, and ancient science and technology. She has authored 2 books on drama, Bad Women, Mad Women, Gender und Wahnsinn in der Griechischen Tragödie, Classica Monacensia, 2011, and on technology, technical automation in Classical Antiquity, Bloomsbury, 2023. Furthermore, she has taken on the role of co-editor for 5 collective volumes that explore diverse topics, including miracles, Recognizing Miracles in Antiquity and Beyond, De Gruyter, 2018, Mirrors and Mirroring from Antiquity to the Early Modern Period, Bloomsbury, 2020, The Intersection of Technology, Medicine, and Sexuality and Gender, Body and Machine in Classical Antiquity, CUP, 2023, Body Technologies in the Ancient Greco-Roman World, Technology, Gender, and Sex, LUP, and Technologies of Animation. In Classical Antiquity, OUP 2024. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan, for the nice introduction. And of course, thank you for the invitation to discuss today with you my recent book on technical automation in classical antiquity. So I will start sharing my screen. Technical automation in Greece, in ancient Greece. I'll focus on Greek examples that discuss cases of technical automation today. Now, the ancient world possessed a level of technological sophistication that often surprises contemporary audience. The technological prowess is evidenced not just in mythological narratives, but also in the written works of ancient engineers, and on rare occasions through the preservation of actual technical artifacts. Among the technological achievements of the ancient world, of ancient Greece and Rome, the creation, the manufacture of self-moving artifacts, the so-called automata, and the process and the process of technical automation stand out. The concept of moving artifacts made its earliest appearances within myths, often intertwined with tales of gods and skilled artists endowed with seemingly magical abilities. However, as the Hellenistic era dawned, fueled by the technological and scientific innovations originating mostly from Alexandria, these myths, these stories, began to align with, and in some cases, draw inspiration from the accomplishments of genuine technical experts. These experts provided scientific explanations for how inert matter could be actually set into motion. The manufacture of technical automata had not only unlocked a novel comprehension of the mechanism underpinning technological automation, but also imparted fresh significance to the broader notion of moving artifacts. Now, as you can crucial for understanding technical automata and technical automation in classical antiquity is the notion of automation in general. What do we mean with automation? In non-mechanical Greek texts, the term automatos is often employed to depict the innate reproductive capacity of nature and its organic processes. It signifies the spontaneous actions of nature, such as the blossoming of a flower. So this is what you can see on the slide. It's a natural automatic procedure. This notion of automation closely aligns with the concept of automatos bios, automatic life, which is often portrayed in old comedy, and it describes the self-generating or inherent production of goods. In old comedy, mostly in the fragments of old comedy, we do have, these natural automatic procedures are being described. For instance, a fish is being fried on its own, or dishes are being washed on their own, again, in the fragments of old comedy, in old comedy. So this procedure, which is again described with the term automatos, describes or represents these natural automatic procedures, like the blossoming of a flower. During the classical period, automation frequently presents a stark contrast to what we call techne, or technology. It is frequently described with the adjective agrios, meaning wild or uncultivated, challenging everything that is hieropeiton, which is crafted by human hands. This shift often carries an undertone of potential menace toward the natural world and its natural processes. So we have on the one hand the natural processes, which are being described as automatoi, which means the term the classical period is very close to the term agrios, and cultivate and wild. And on the other hand, we have this technology. So natural automation and techne stand in opposition in the classical period, in contrast to the archaic period, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I will talk a little bit about the classical period before I go into more detail about the term automatos in the archaic period. Just to give you an example about on what I mean with this opposition, on the one hand, natural automation, on the other hand, technology and techne. In the Hippocratic medical text, for instance, automatos, the term automatos, refers to all internal natural bodily processes that occur spontaneously without the need for external intervention by a physician. It's a completely natural process. And this process, these natural process, automatic processes, according to the Hippocratic text, can harm the patient. And technology and techne, on the other hand, the techne of the physician is the one which can somehow manipulate or stop this natural automatism that can harm the patient. Now, this concept of automation changes again in the Hellenistic period, where it is employed in the text by the engineers. So in the Hellenistic period, the term automatos is employed by the engineers in order to describe the function of automata, of mechanical automata. In the Hellenistic period, the term in a way pertains to the specific Greek concept that describes the inherent nature of being automatic or self-operating. That is, it denotes the quality of each feature of actions occurring without any human, at least direct human intervention. Simultaneously, in the Hellenistic period, the term automatos, the concept of automation, develops a little bit further and encompasses the idea of mechanized and self-operating systems. Mechanical automation is inherent within the very core of the machine, stemming from the convergence of three closely intertwined elements: the mechanical design, the tools, and the materials. I will talk about this later on in the paper. So what we need to understand is that as an introduction to the concept of technical automation is that the term of automatos is very crucial for the understanding of technical automation. And in the archaic period, this automation represents the natural processes, the process of nature. Later on, it still represents natural process, but there is a technique stands in opposition to these natural processes. And then the Hellenistic period, we have a mechanized form of these natural automatons. So the Hellenistic engineers take advantage of the term, employ the term in order to describe the way a machine is functioning. But I'll give you more details later on. Let's start with the archaic automation. One of the most renowned accounts, reports, narratives of automata can be found in Homer's Iliad. The fundamental question raised by this initial example is, and I will give you the context in a second, the question that we need to have in the back of our head before we see the paragraph is: what instigates technological automation in Homer's narrative in Book 18? What we see in this Book 18, in this passage, Thetis enters Hephaestus' workshop and discovers the god laboring intensely. He's actively attaching handles to a set of 20-wheel tripods, each endowed with a remarkable ability to navigate on their own accord to the gatherings of the Olympian deities without any external aid. And here we have a tripod, which sadly does not move on its own accord, but yes, it's a simple tripod. Just to imagine this tripod moving on its own accord to the Olympian, to the place where the Olympian gods were gathering. Subsequently, in the same passage, in the same book, golden handmaidens, also crafted by Hephaestus, bear a striking resemblance to living girls, and swiftly rush to assist the lame Hephaestus as he proceeds towards Achilles' mother. To complete this remarkable scene, 20 bellows, by propelling gas of air into their melting pots, deliver a formidable blast to support Hephaestus in any task his work may demand. Now, I won't go into extensive details of what previous scholars have said regarding the automatic movement of the Hephaestian devices. Their interpretations have varied over time, but I will just give you some idea of the various interpretations. Some, for instance, regarded the Iliadic Hephaestian automata as a narrative embodiment of the artistic subtlety. That means, according to these scholars, what we see here in book 18 is a kind of ekphrasis, which exaggerates, in its exaggeration makes, in its exaggeration about the fine art of Hephaestus, in praising the fine art of Hephaestus, presents the Hephaestian devices as if they were moving. So this is the first explanation of the automatic motion of the Hephaestian devices. Others see these devices as products of divine and magical animation. In recent years, their animated nature has been attributed to material agency or explained as a cognitive interpretation of the actions of inanimate matter. Now, what we mean with material agency, the scholars who support this idea, they argue that motion is the result of the properties or the capabilities of the materials involved in the manufacture of these devices. And the scholars suggest that the materials themselves, so the materials themselves somehow possess the qualities that make the Hephaestian devices look and behave in an animated way. Now, the second argument about the cognitive interpretation of their automatic motion suggests that their animation is a result of a cognitive, a mental interpretation of their action. And in this scenario, the Hephaestian devices are animated by cognitive processes and are directly connected to the mind of Hephaestus. Very recently, the Hephaestian automata have been explained as a proto-mechanical automata, which officially, of course, emerged after the Hellenistic period. Now, I will start about. I will say a few words. I will add some comments regarding these various interpretations before I present to you my own argument, my idea behind the automatic motion of the Hephaestian devices. So, if we say that, let's start with the material agency of the Hephaestian devices. If we say that the materials that are being used are the ones that cause automatic motion, in this way we undermine somehow Hephaestus' influence. And Hephaestus, the god, he is there. We can say that there is a combination. So Hephaestus' power on the one hand, Hephaestus' techne on the one hand, and the material being used on the other hand, both together cause the automatic motion of the automaton. Can we say that Hephaestus, if we accept that Hephaestus is there and he's in a way responsible for the manufacture of the automata, but is he responsible for the automatic motion as such? The idea of divine power and magical faculties of Hephaestus explaining entirely the self-moving Hephaestian devices is somehow questionable as well, since it eliminates the power of automation, which is clearly described in the text. So we can accept that Hephaestus is the one who is responsible for the manufacture of the automata, but if we accept that his divine power or magical powers are the one which cause the automatic motion. In a way, we eliminate the automatic motion itself, which is being clearly described by the text. And it means, and it suggests that the tripods are moving on their own accord. Now, as far as the first explanation is concerned, which suggests that the self-moving artifacts can be the result of an artistic exaggeration, an ekphrastic or a descriptive exaggeration that praises the art of Hephaestus. Now, this type of animation is often the result of a skillful rhetor or a poet, and its purpose is to praise the skills of the artist who manufacture the allegedly lifelike artifact. However, in the case of the automatic artifacts, the manufacturer, in our case Hephaestus, as I said, is not directly identified as the person responsible for the artifact's motion. That's why I repeat, the text describes the tripods and the maiden as, and the girls, the golden girls, as automatoi. So in our passage, Hephaestus is certainly not credited with their automation. He is the one manufacturing the automata, but he's not responsible for their automation. As I said, the text portrays the tripods, the handmaids, and the bellows as automatoi, functioning autonomously. So automation in this passage results from a specific technique that somehow regulates movement and executes certain tasks. The motion of these automated living devices differ for sure from that of a chariot, where the driver or the horses are the cause of motion. Indeed, these Iliadic devices do not seem to be driven by actual mechanism of self-motion. There is a reference at some point in this passage that there is a reference to the tripod's kyklai, to the tripod's wheel. But again, the wheels here, the kyklai, they do not explain their automatic motion. And here is a chariot with wheels, and everything comes from the archaic period to be found in the British Museum. So it's not that we can say, as recently Adriana Mayer has argued, that these automata are kind of proto-mechanical automata, because there's nothing there. There's even the kyklai, which are being described in the text, they don't seem responsible for the automatic motion of the tripods, and they're no different in form from those, for instance, that Hebe adjusts to a carriage in an earlier book, or the ones used in a simile at book 18 describing Achilles' shield, where the dancer's motion is compared to a potter's wheel movement, or they don't have anything, they're very similar to the wheels placed underneath Helen's basket in Odyssey Book 4. So these kyklai, the kyklai that are being described, the tripods kyklai that have been described in Book 18, they're very usual. They're the usual kyklai, and they're surely not the one causing the automation, the automatic movement of the Hephaestian devices. Instead, automatic force is here associated with concealed forces. So it has nothing to do with Hephaestus, has nothing to do with mechanism and tools like wheels. Nothing to do with the divine or magic. It has to do is associate their automatic forces is probably associated with concealed forces, which seem to substitute human or divine craftsmanship, such as Hephaestus' craft, or the abilities of a reader or a poet to describe an artifact. Remember that some scholars have argued that the automatic motion, the lifelike motion of the tripods is a result of rhetorical skills. In this context, the Hephaestion automata share similarities with what we call, what I already described in the introduction as natural automation. So they share similarities with natural forces. In the case of natural automatism, in the case of natural forces, we can witness the outcomes of these processes, yet we're unable to visually understand, to see the actual mechanisms behind them. It's the same thing happening here with the automatic motion of the tripods. Let's go back to the blossom of the flowers. We can see the blossom, but we cannot see the mechanism behind it. Hence, the tripod's kickler are indeed distinct in that they are constructed to move in analogy to self-regulating natural forces, a consideration often overlooked by modern scholars. So the tripods and their kickler, of course, they are special in a way, because they can employ or they move in analogy to these natural automatic forces. And this is very crucial at this point, just to recognize how natural behavior influences ideas about technological behaviors, allow us to appreciate the extent to which later concepts of technology reflect natural phenomena and their functionality. Thus, I propose that the Iliadic Hephaestion devices anticipate the mechanical automata of later periods, not in terms of the mechanical elements that are being involved in the process, but in association with the natural ones. So in the way later on mechanical automata, as we'll see, reflect natural processes as well. While in the archaic period, technical automation resembles the functionality of nature, demonstrating continuities between nature and technology, in the classical period, marked by the emergence of the polis and the rise of what Christian Meyer terms Kennen's Bewusstsein, that is the consciousness of ability. In this period, in the classical period, automation is established, as I said, as a distinct power to technology. Techne, in this period, is capable of manipulating and even reproducing natural automatism, and thus technical automation here clearly serves the intention of its manufacturers and users. Now, this progress or this development, let's say, is best reflected in a scene that I like very much in the Clouds, where Aristophanes explicitly speaks about technology and its role in intellectual production. In the play, Strepsiades offers both his body and self to Socrates, the grand teacher, the didaskalos of the frontisterion, of the thinkering, allowing him to manipulate them, both his body and mind, as he pleases, in the hope, of course, of learning how to deceive his enemies. At some point in the text, Socrates asks Strepsiades to enlighten him about his mind's capabilities, inquiring about his memory, in order to design new components for him to replace the old ones. In order to design, according to the text, kainas, new mechanas, new machines, new components. the atrophy of Strepsiades' intellectual capacity due to old age is crucial here. Strepsiades' body and mind are treated like a device that can improve its defective parts by replacing them. If Strepsiades accepts these new components, he will become a new man, and hence beyond his inborn characteristics. You and Chaerephon are going to be very much alike, Socrates says, and he shows a student of him. Strepsiades is, of course, upset, fearing that the enhancement procedure that Socrates is suggesting will make him resemble this half-dead person, Chaerephon. In the text, Chaerephon is described as Hemipnes. The joke lies, of course, in Strepsiades' misunderstanding, thinking that the procedure affects his appearance rather than his mental improvement through knowledge. But Strepsiades believes in two types of knowledge. Firstly, he believes in what he describes as tacit knowledge, which is not easily transferable, like emotional experience or everyday facts, natural facts such as the sunrise, for instance. But he also believes in what he again describes as explicit knowledge that can be articulated, codified, stored, and assessed. Strepsiades seeks the latter to deceive his enemy, and that's why he goes to Socrates and his thinkery. Socrates, on the other hand, attempts to teach Strepsiades about nature and offers knowledge about even the tiniest element, demonstrating, for instance, how the jump height of a flea could be observed, recorded, and codified as information. But from Strepsiades' perspective, Socratic education and this type of knowledge does not seem particularly useful. How will all this help me get my daily bread? He asked at some point in the text. And again, later on in the text, he says, I just want to learn the very worst argument. I just want to learn how to deceive my enemies. But once, says Socrates, there are some other things you have to learn first. You cannot acquire knowledge automatically, in an automatic way, suddenly, like a natural procedure. Well, replies Strepsiades, I'm now paraphrasing the text. Well, he says, I can get my penis erect automatically. I'm sure there is a similar way to learn how to deceive my enemies. So in a natural way, suddenly and quickly. In the end, Socrates says, get lost. I'm not going to be your teacher anymore. You're not able to learn anything. Nevertheless, in this way, Strepsiades avoids the unsettling prospect of losing his individuality and autonomy through the Socratic process, preventing himself from becoming a mere instrument of Socrates. This story is an amusing story, apart from showcasing the example of an intellectual or mental / technical automaton, where the technical skills of the manufacturer here of Socrates are being highlighted, since they are the ones which clearly guide the automaton, contrast with the notion of archaic automation and its natural character, where the manufacturer, as we have seen, is non-existent. It's actually not there. It's not part of the automation process. Because all it counts all that counts in the archaic character, in the archaic version of automation, is the automatic power of the device itself, and not the intentions of the manufacturer, who clearly, the technique of the manufacturer clearly in the classical period is the one who is guiding the automaton. So the manufacturer and the automaton, it's one system. This story is also very important, the story from the clouds, because it proposes ways to examine how to incorporate the metaphor of the theatrical automaton. Since we're talking about Aristophanes and comedy, we're talking about theatrical automata. And this story suggests ways of how to incorporate these theatrical automata into discussions about technology, and it is important to include theater into the discussions about technology. Also, technology coming later on the Hellenistic period, since as we'll see in the Hellenistic period, real mechanical performances also exploit the co-presence of constructed animate characters and of an audience. So that's why it is very important to take into consideration the theatrical, the automata metaphors that we see in Greek drama as well. Now, from the 4th century onwards, technical automation serves as a heuristic device for illustrating ideas about motion and liveness. The introduction of the mechanical automaton in the Hellenistic period, on the other hand, allows for the actual representation of technology as a life-giving force. Mechanical automata are defined by mechanical feasibility based on design or engineering plan, tools, and materials. But before I delve into mechanical automata of the Hellenistic period, I just want to briefly examine the case of automata in the 4th century. What do we have in the 4th century? Beyond Archytas, the Greek philosopher, before Archytas' flying dove, technical automation prior to the Hellenistic era, and the manufacture of machines is associated with both what is called neurospasta, which refers to puppets with movable limbs, and taumata, that describe enigmatic trick acts. So automation in the 4th century is mostly associated with these puppets with movable limbs, the so-called neurospasta, and with these shows that are being described as taumata. What characterizes both taumata and neurospasta is their capacity to mimic spontaneous actions, although the extent to which human intervention influence this mimicry varies. In the case of neurospasta, here we have the puppets with movable limbs. The skillful puppeteers conceal hands, the strings, and the unique design of the puppet with movable limbs are evidently responsible for the puppet's allegedly spontaneous movement. On the other hand, in taumatopoeia, in the case of taumata, and as I said, taumata describe we're not sure about the actual context of these shows, but let's say that they present some jugglers doing some acrobatic actions, and in contrast to the case of the neurospasta, in the case of the juggler, intervention, what is being concealed here, and it's being concealed entirely, is human and technical, human labor and technical, technical media. Let me show you the next slide, where you can see an acrobat. Although we do see the body of the acrobat, the juggler, the body of the juggler is treated as part of the whole show, and it's not an intervention. It's not like the fingers of the puppeteer or the strings or the movable limbs of the puppets that are clearly responsible for the spontaneous motion which is being produced. In the case of the jugglers, the body of the juggler is part of the whole automatic procedure and it gives the impression that it moves in a spontaneous way and without any training. So the juggler gives the impression to the audience that what the audience sees is something that happens in a very in a way which is does not request any labor at all. And in juggler shows, for the same reason, the jugglers avoid using any elaborate media. For instance, they just use for their juggler, they use simple stuff like ladders, for instance, again, in order to show that what we see, what the audience sees, is it's a procedure that it's not the result of a hard training, but it's a very natural and spontaneous procedure. Now, as I have already mentioned, this is what we see. This is what we see happening in relation to automation in the 4th century. With the introduction of mechanics during the Hellenistic period, a new era of automation begins. And this era is primarily concerned with a form of inherent automaticity within the machine itself, rather than being entirely orchestrated by its human designer, who is regarded as merely a component of the mechanical process. If we momentarily set aside the fact that the engineers planned and external forces like fire, air, and water are the ones who help the mechanical activity or drive up to a certain degree the mechanical activity, the machine's behavior may appear as the result of an entirely automatic action. In other words, the internal mechanical processes, they do give the impression of causing the automatic behavior of the machine and for causing the machine to imitate spontaneous and natural motion. Nonetheless, and despite its dependence on complicated mechanisms, mechanical art in the Hellenistic period and later on is not viewed as contradictory to the operational nature, but rather as a complement to the natural world. The idea that engineering supplements nature's creative abilities is prominently exemplified in the writings of a Roman statesman with the name Cassiodorus. In a letter addressed to Boetius, Cassiodorus underscores that engineering attempts to imitate nature by using opposing means, and in some instances strives to undo it. We are aware that this craft, says Cassiodorus, enabled Daedalus to achieve flight. It suspends the iron cubit in the temple of Diana without visible support. It continually bestows the power of speech upon mute objects, life upon the lifeless, and mobility upon the immobile. The engineer, if I may use such a term, says Cassiodorus, is nearby a collaborator with nature, unraveling her mysteries, altering her revelations, conjuring wonders, and crafting such exquisite imitations that we mistake artificial creations for natural truths. So in the Hellenistic period, in contrast to what is happening in the classical period, we see a collaboration between mechanical art and nature. The engineer is the one who is adding or helping nature to become better. Machines and mechanical systems designed for spontaneity and automation are distinctly characterized by Hellenistic engineers through three interconnected factors: the design or the engineering plan, the tools employed in the manufacture of these automata, and the external power sources, or more broadly, the materials which are being used in the manufacture of automatic machines. Let's begin with the last factor, with the materials. Engineers like Hero select specific materials such as wood, air, form, due to their capacity to align with the engineering plan and for achieving automation, thereby resolving various technical challenges and ensuring the functionality of the automaton. These materials exhibit autonomous properties like flexibility, which are also found, of course, in natural organisms, enabling them to operate in a similar ways by responding to changes in their surroundings. Now, this is very important for automatic motion. Hero, for instance, discuss in great detail in his own automata the materials of cords, which are made either of flax or hemp, and he discussed this because the elasticity of these materials is crucial for the ability of the cord to be wound around screws or axles. So it's very important for the final result, which is, of course, automatic motion. That's why he discussed the material of the cord. In addition to the choice of materials, engineering processes incorporate various tools, of course, and technologies that enhance the capability to automate objects. In addition to the well-known tools from the archaic period, such as the wheel and the axle, lever and wedge, the Hellenistic era introduces two additional tools, which is the gear wheel and the screw. Just to answer another acrobat. Here we have the gear wheel. The Alexandrian engineer Hero, in his work Mechanics, not only elucidates the use of tools like the windlass, lever, pulley, wedge, and screw, but also provides insight into why these tools are able to move substantial weights despite the application of relatively small force. And he also explains how these five tools can achieve greater effectiveness when employed in combination with other devices. The operation of mechanical automata, as we'll see in a moment, I will just describe two examples of mechanical automata. So their operation is initiated by a single external force, such as air or water, the influence of a falling weight, or the release of a spring, and the use or the combination of these tools. So tools and materials, of course. So tools, materials, and the last factor, which is very important in the construction of automata and causes automatic motion, is, of course, the design. The dimensions, and we design the engineers are actually referring to the size of the automata. Wait a minute, I need to stop here in order to plug in my computer. In order to do that, I need to change. Sorry about that. So the size of the automaton, which is small, and the size, as the engineers explain, automata should conceal their operational mechanisms behind the machine's performance, rendering them, according to their text, invisible aphanes. In order to do that, they need to position them somewhere inside the machine where they cannot be seen by the audience. Now, the concept of invisibility of this mechanism is closely linked to the notion of smallness in mechanical technology. The small size of the automaton underscores the technical mastery, the technical proficiency of the engineer. Also, in addition to that, the concept of smallness and invisibility assumes an audience which is interested in understanding the causes behind the automatic motion. That's why Hero and other engineers often highlight this connection in their work when they advise future automaton makers to construct devices small enough to dispel any suspicion that someone might be concealed inside the automaton operating the automaton. Because of the ways mechanics and the art of constructing automata were associated with deception in the 4th century CE, Pappus, a mathematician, described the engineers as wonder makers, as thaumaturgoi, and who aimed to mystify the uninformed spectators by emulating the natural movements of living creatures. So Pappus described them as wonder makers, because the art of engineering, the Mechanike Techne, is indeed very close to the act of deceiving the audience. Although Hero explicitly says, and other engineers argue in their treatises that the automata must be constructed, the size of the automata must be small, so people will actually believe that what causes the automatic motion is a mechanism and not a person inside the automaton. The engineer Hero of Alexandria, in his work on automata, describes a number of complex automatic theaters that run mostly by pulleys, weights, and ropes. One, for instance, tells the tale of Napoleon, which is related to the aftermath of the Trojan War. And here it is. This theater has doors that open and close by themselves, and a series of 9 two-dimensional tableaus that include, among others, a scene with moving nymphs who saw wood to build ships. The model ships appear to be moving on the sea, and model dolphins jump out of the sea around the ships. The temple's doors open when a fire is lit on a nearby altar. As you can see on the slide, the whole temple and altar sit above a hollowed out area or a pedestal, under which is an elaborated apparatus that works in the following way. The heat of the fire forces air down a metal tube attached to the bottom of the altar into a sealed container partly filled with water. The hot air raises the pressure inside this container, pushing water through a lower tube and into a bucket suspended by chains. The chains, connected to the 2 extra long cylindrical hinges that extend down into the space underneath the temple doors, tighten and turn the hinges when the bucket fills with water. There is a weight attached to the other chains, which you cannot see so well in the slide. And so there is a weight attached to the other chains, wrapped counter to the ones around the cylindrical hinges. And when the fire is extinguished, the fire on the altar, the natural vacuum that results in the sealed container causes the water to siphon back into it, lighting the bucket and allowing the waves to pull the doors closed. In Hero of Alexandria, in his treatise on the automata, many other examples are being described, examples of automatic motion. The most beautiful ones are the ones who combine automatic mechanism and hydraulic powers, like the one that you can see here, which is present Heracles and a dragon, but I will not go into detail. I will not explain these examples since we don't have much time left. What is important, and as we have witnessed, the engineers reveal the mechanical secrets of their automata as they wish their audience to be aware that the effect produced by this automata is based on engineering developed by a craftsman. So the purpose of the engineers is not to deceive the audience, but they just want to explain how these automata are being constructed and how they function. So the automata must be perceived as part of an engineering process determined by an expert who aims to construct, this expert aims to construct a different reality. This different reality, which captures inanimate matter as moving, although it's paradoxical, it is real. It can become perceptible through the senses, through the eyes, through the ears of the audience. However, the amazement that this animation arouses, I repeat, does not signify the audience distortion or its bedazzlement before incomprehensible causes of motion. Wonderment in this case is directly linked with the outcome of the mechanical procedure, the mechanical device, its complexity, and the way it functions. In his book, The Technology of Enchantment and the Enchantment of Technology, Alfred Gell describes the concept of technical wonder, although in a different context. I mean, in this book, Gell describes contemporary art and its enchanting qualities. However, what he describes as technical wonder, which grows as the audience becomes more familiar with the challenges involved in the construction of an artwork, is very similar to the kind of wonder that we see being employed in the treatises of the engineers. So this kind of mechanical wonder that the engineers are, the type of mechanical wonder that the ancient engineers are describing their texts is the type of wonder which again grows as the audience becomes aware of the procedure, of the tools being used in the manufacture of automata, the materials, and the challenges faced by the engineers during the challenge that the engineer faced during the construction of automata. And what Alfred Gell is described in this is describing as technical wonder. What we see happening in the mechanical texts of the ancient engineers is also described by the French philosopher Gilbert Simondon when he talks about techno and aesthetics and talks specifically about Mona Lisa, saying that a technical analysis of the smile of Mona Lisa does not eliminate the extraordinary beauty of the painting. In contrast, it increases its if the audience understands the technical expertise and the technical knowledge behind the painting, the audience will be able to appreciate the painting even more. And as I said, mechanical automata present and use wonderment in the same way. As automation is being, as it becomes further elucidated, automation in the text of the engineers, the wonderment of the audience increase, and it transforms into a showcase of erudition on behalf of the engineer. Hence, technical wonder is associated not only with concealed causes behind the operation and motion of the automaton, but also the more it is explained, the more it becomes a source of wonder when contemplating the final product, which is, of course, the automaton. And it is within this context of wonderment and rational explanation that lifeless things, lifeless objects, are transmuted into animated entities. The movement of the automata hints at a form of natural vitality intricately linked to mechanical principles and procedures, all under the guiding hand of the engineer, who serves as the invisible animating force. Now we'll close the talk. I'm very sorry that it took so long, with some final general observation. A final general observation, what I have aimed to demonstrate in this book, and generally in the book on technical automation, is that technical automation in antiquity, as depicted both in non-mechanical texts and the texts of engineers, serves as a reflection of nature, while simultaneously offering insights into human artistry and the power of mechanisms and materials. In other words, technical automation in classical antiquity draws inspiration from nature to inform technical procedures and applications. And this concept finds relevance in contemporary modern cases of biologically inspired devices with enhanced capabilities. Essentially, both in antiquity and the modern world, natural patterns serve as guides for the development of efficient technical designs and solutions. Thank you very much for your attention and of course invitation. Thank you. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much. If you have a few minutes, we can see if—
Yes, I do have 3 minutes. I'm sorry again for the I mean, it took so long.
Thank you so much. Yeah, if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask, go ahead. You can either raise your hand or just speak.
Egyptians, other cultures.
Patty, can you restate that?
Oh, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry, my microphone was tipped up. So I was wondering whether the Greeks got some of the technological knowledge about automation from other cultures like the Egyptians. I don't know too much about this. So.
Yeah. As So that the concept of automation, automatos, as has been described in the text, it's mostly Greek. So I mean, although I did some research on the Egyptian neurospasta, because we do have cases of Egyptian puppets with movable limbs, I couldn't find anything that resembles the concept of automation. What I tried to describe today is that what we see happening in the Hellenistic period with the Hellenistic automata, heroes automata, which are the most famous one, is something that has a kind of a history. It doesn't shows up in the Hellenistic period out of the blue. I mean, it's not something that appears in the Hellenistic period suddenly. Has a history, and this goes back to the archaic period, and is connected to nature, and is associated with techne, and with the relationship of these two, of techne and nature. So automation, as we see it in the text of the Hellenistic engineer, it's a Greek product.
Thank you. Thank you.
If there aren't any other questions, thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for this lecture.
And before you go, if you haven't heard already, next month we're having a conference in New York City, and Maria will be there, and she'll be presenting about technology in ancient theater. And if you're interested in this topic of technology in antiquity, that is the conference theme, and there'll be lots more programming in that area. So here is the link to that in the chat if you're interested. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Ciao. See you next month in New York. Bye-bye.